All right, hey everybody, welcome to Season 5, Episode 15, also known as Episode 151 of the Retro Game Club podcast. I'm Hugh, and joining me is someone who had all of his notes from 1997 leaked to the internet, Rob.
Yeah, I thought the PCFX was going to put Sony out of business.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could talk about that now. It's in our news items, but what are your thoughts on the Segaleak?
Yeah, I know we were like debating in the show notes whether or not we were even going to talk about this. It is a really interesting subject, I think. I guess someone on eBay had these notes and put them up on the internet, or someone bought them off eBay. They didn't say how much they paid for them, but they said they believe the notes were valued at $400 to $500, so I'm guessing maybe that's what they paid. Mm-hmm. Seems like a lot, like, wow. I sometimes when I go to like garage sales, hope I'll stumble across like, you know, the home of like some old developer that left all their notes behind. But this is better than just like programming notes. This is like internal memos and sales projections and weirdly optimistic views of how the how the Saturn is doing in Japan.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one of the notes was like, man, everyone in Japan has a Saturn. No, literally not one single person is buying a PlayStation. Like, based totally on my anecdotal evidence of walking around to stores.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the Saturn was winning for like 5 days or something.
Yeah, it had a head start, and it had, you know, of course, the Sega IP. It had some really great arcade ports. I mean, Saturn's still a great system to play mid-90s Sega arcade games, right? It's still just a fabulous system for that. I like my Saturn. But no, I mean, I worked in a game store at this time, and yeah, Saturn had a good head start. But like that Christmas season, you know, by the end of December, it was pretty clear PlayStation was going to win. It was outselling, and then, you know, the day after Christmas is kind of the telling one, like, what are people coming in to buy controllers for, and so on. So, again, that's anecdotal evidence, though. I'm falling for the same trap.
I mean, the Saturn, that Christmas was the same year, wasn't it, that Donkey Kong Country came out? And so
that was before. That was, yeah, it wasn't. I mean, I don't believe it came out in '95, but it was definitely, because I remember there's a whole separate promotion for Donkey Kong Country, and I think that was a '94 release. But there's just so much marketing for Donkey Kong Country. It was over the top. It was the same year that Windows 95 came out, so that was just you know, looking back, that was really a cool time to be right in the middle of it all.
Yeah. I mean, my point was going to be that Donkey Kong Country looks better than many Saturn games. You know? Yeah,
it looks better than some launch title PlayStation games too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So, you know, it's hard to convince people to buy a new system if your 16-bit console is looking pretty good.
Yeah, but you know, the arcade ports was kind of a big. Hold on, I hear there's some dude that's put up like the 1995 Christmas catalog, and I guess I could go look at that. So like hot PC games then were like, obviously Doom was still really hot. Descent was new. I think we're going to be hearing about Descent later on in this episode. So those were kind of the maybe the hottest PC games. What was on? Where is? Oh, I got to scroll down through this catalog with some randos. And you still had the Atari Jaguar out there. That was still a system. The 3DO was still a system. Yeah, no, so on the Nintendo page for Christmas 1995, the featured games are Donkey Kong Country 2, Yoshi's Island, Killer Instinct, which, to your point, looked better than some launch title games, for sure. And then something called the Virtual Boys on that page.
Huh, okay.
The 3DO, the featured games for 3DO are the Daedalus Encounter, I might have mispronounced that, and D, which I did not mispronounce.
Yeah. Huh.
I'm confident I got D correct. On the Sega Genesis, what you're featuring is Spider-Man. Spider-Man Venom Separation Anxiety.
I've never played that one.
No. And on the Game Gear, you're featuring VR Troopers and Chicago Syndicate.
Chicago Syndicate. I don't know if I
Chicago
know that
Syndicate
one.
is a spin-off of Eternal Champions. They took the Chicago gangster character from Eternal Champions and gave him his own platforming game.
What system is this on?
Game Gear is only Game Gear.
Oh, okay. Game Gear is kind of a blind spot for me.
I have this. One of the reasons I'm excited to someday get my analog Game Gear converter is to play this on like a real handheld, as opposed to emulation. But anyhow, yeah. So Christmas '95, very exciting stuff. But you kind of see like these early optimism for the Saturn in these notes, and then you see its very rapid decline. The thing that I thought was really interesting, and I do want to make sure we include this in the notes because it's a really good article. So at SegaSaturnShiro.com, we maybe have mentioned the site before. They did an article about all the games mentioned as potentially coming soon for the Saturn, and they made like, I don't know if they made all this box art, but there's quite a few cases where there's box art for the games that are previewed. A lot of it looks like they just scraped the internet for some pictures. It's fine. People do that. But there's some really cool games that had been in development and scrapped, like 11th Hour. I'm kind of surprised 11th Hour didn't get ported to any of the systems at that time.
Yeah.
But they talk about like, I'm kind of taking these in order, like Dark Sun, which was a big RPG on PC. Somehow there was a rumor of a Elder Scrolls Arena port. That's, I don't know if the Saturn memory card could, that's a big chunk of memory probably. Because that's a big game, and I imagine the save game for that is huge. They mentioned Alien versus Predator, but I don't know. I don't know if they're talking about what you saw in the Atari Jaguar or the Alien versus Predator arcade game. The latter seems more like a Saturn game to me.
Yeah. There are some pretty bad ones here, too. Like, it's probably good that Manic Carts never came out. I don't think that would have done very well.
Yeah. It mentions Descent. I really thought Descent was on the Sega Saturn.
That's on a system, right?
It's on PlayStation. I think I have it on PlayStation. But I can't play. I throw up the second I look at that game. Those just the box makes me nauseous.
Terra Nova would be cool.
They talk about some like Return to Zork, which I believe that might have gotten a Japanese release, but not a U.S. localization. Some really, really amazing stuff that could have been on the system.
Emilio Estevez's Fox Hunt? That's Emilio Estevez, right? Or no? Am I...
No, it's not. I don't think so.
It looks just like him.
Oh, no. It's... This was a game, though. It might have been on... Don't quote me, but I thought it was on...
It's on
3DO
PlayStation.
also.
Okay.
It's on PlayStation for sure. Yeah. Maybe I think I'm thinking of a different 3DO game. Fox Hunt. Hold on. This autocomplete for Fox Hunt is really crazy.
I'm surprised Grand Theft Auto never came out because like GTA 2 is on Dreamcast.
Yeah, it's just a timing thing, I guess. Full cast and crew. Fox Hunt, 1993 video game. The lead character is Timothy Bottoms.
That's a name for sure.
It's a name. George Lazenby. Rob Lowe is in it.
For real? Wow.
Yes, Rob Lowe. It's right here in the credits. He was not. His career was not certainly booming at that time. I mean, I realize like Rob Lowe has had a huge career resurgence in the 21st century. But at that point in the 90s, I mean, I think people viewed him as like a has-been, which was obviously a premature assessment of his career.
Yeah.
Yeah, he plays Edison Pettibone.
That's a name too.
Yeah. But yeah, that to me is the most interesting thing that was in the retro gaming community this week.
Yeah, I agree. But what else have you been up to?
Yeah, what have I been up to? So, was it last episode or something? I was teasing that I was working on an article about 8 games that were PC games and like aren't listed on Moby Games, not listed on GameFAQs. I checked both again. I looked up like the developers' names. The developers' names aren't on Moby Games. Like they're just not documented at all.
Yeah, I could not put it together with your hints.
Yeah. So what I was talking about were the 8 XFiles DVD games that were released between 2000 and 2004. So if you bought the collector's edition of the X-Files DVDs, the last disc contained a game.
Yeah.
Right. And I have 7 of the 8 games. For some reason, the box that I have for 3 doesn't have. It had all the discs have a menu that say, disc 7 has a game, but there's literally not even a spot for disc 7 in the box I have.
Yeah.
So I think at some point they started shipping them without the bonus games. So I did a playthrough of 6 of them. One of them would not install. The Season 4 game I tried on multiple virtual machines would not install. The others all installed in Windows 98. I picked 98 because I figured, that's probably what they were developed on. Mm-hmm. I know I said 2000, 2004, but that means development probably started more like 99, and they all seem to be built in the same, I don't know if I would say game engine, but it's clearly like we built one game and then we just kept building on top of that.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the thing I put up, a review of 6 of these 8 games. Hopefully I'm going to be looking at half-price books now to see if I can get that last CD that I'm missing. And then I might make another attempt to get the Season 4 game to run.
Did you have fun playing these?
No, not even a little. They're interesting to look at, but they get, the games get better over time. I'll say that. Like the first game, the user interface, like you really have no idea what you're supposed to be doing most of the time. Mm-hmm. Because the navigation through the game isn't very good, and the puzzles are really kind of obtuse. I literally had to take screenshots and blow up the images to try and figure out what's going on in the puzzles. But they improve a lot over time. By about disc 5, it's a game. It's not an awesome game, but it's playable, and parts of it are interesting.
Oh, are you an X-Files fan?
Yeah, that's what happened. So what happened is, I wanted to stream X-Files, right? Mm-hmm. Turns out, I don't know how you do that. So I looked on eBay and found that you can just buy all the box set DVDs for not a lot of money.
Yeah.
DVDs are really, really cheap right now. I think I joked in the article that they'll probably be cheap until I don't know what generation is after Gen Z, but maybe one day the hipsters from that generation will decide that DVDs are cool. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then DVDs will be expensive, right? It's possible. Who knows?
And that happened with VHS.
Yeah, well, it happened, with vinyl, VHS, mm-hmm. All that stuff. So, yeah, it could happen. So I was buying them while they were really cheap, and then later on I'm just going to I looked it up. You can buy an Android streaming box and 1 terabyte drive combined for under $100 nowadays.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's I don't have to rip the episode. I don't have to do any compression. I just have to copy the DVDs and stick them on a drive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
VLC player will play a DVD image.
Yeah.
No point wasted. It's a lot of time to compress images or compress video and make sure it's in a format that the player works with and all that stuff. It's just a lot of work that I don't have time for. But ripping a DVD is really easy. So that's how this started. And then I'm ripping these DVDs so I can put them on a streaming box. And I realize, oh, look, these have games. I wonder what they're like. And then I go to look up the games, and there's no info on them. And that then becomes a mission for me.
Nice. And an article, yeah.
An article, yeah. I mean, these are the equivalent of you think of how many TV shows and movies had flash games on their website around this time.
Yeah.
Right. So these games are equivalent to kind of the free things you would see on a website for a movie or TV show. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's cool. It was fun creating the article. It was not fun playing the games. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Are you gonna write a walkthrough?
Well, there's sort of a walkthrough. For some of the games, I paste the solution to the puzzles where it's not obvious how you solve them. Mm-hmm. It's especially true on the first disc. The first 2 discs, the puzzles are, it's not you play 7th Guest or 11th Hour, and it'll have puzzles that are kind of classic puzzles. Here's 8 queens, arrange them on a chessboard so no queen is attacking another queen. Stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, these are weird, here's some symbols, decode them. Oh, by the way, they're too small to actually read.
Yeah. I saw those images. where like,
Yeah.
I mean, you had to actually enhance them to see.
To see what was going on, yeah. It's really, really painful. But it was fun to kind of like check them out and see. And I think like at the end of the day, the developers had kind of a decent idea. It's like, we're going to create a game where you're sort of recreating scenes from episodes. I don't think it started as a bad idea. Like, you know, some games are just a bad idea and nothing will ever make them good.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, someone could take all these games and probably salvage them into something that was actually decent. But, you know, that was interesting. And then while I was doing that, I was noticed on my hard drive that I had another catalog that I scanned like years ago and forgot to post.
Oh, cool. Which one? I'll have to check that out.
I put in the notes there. It is the Electronics Boutique Fall 1987 catalog.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, you know, back then they were still mostly selling like software. So there's like 6 Nintendo games in the entire catalog. Yeah, I scanned it like years ago and just forgot to upload it. So whatever. That's how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because like in 87, like every game that's listed is listed like Commodore 64, 128, Apple II, Macintosh, Amiga, Atari ST, IBM. Like so many games have like 5 versions.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh geez, I kind of thought at that point like PC had already taken over the world. You know, IBM had already taken over the world. But that is definitely not the case here.
Yeah, and sometimes you would have an Apple II and an Apple II GS version, and you would have a IBM, what would it have been then? Would it have been a PS2 at that time?
Well, like ATST, stuff like that.
Yeah, but then also the Tandy version, because that was slightly different.
Yeah, I don't see Tandy listed in here. I think because Radio Shack was like considered a competitor.
Yeah.
So they probably didn't sell Tandy software.
Yeah, you'd have to go to Radio Shack for that.
Yeah, that's probably it. What else? I think that is yes, I mentioned article I want to talk about. So, I had to go to Walmart yesterday to buy dirt. That's a true story. The choice of owning a home, sometimes you have to buy dirt.
Yeah.
And I noticed that Walmart has already taken down their 4th of July section and replaced it with the back to school section. Because it's a whole 4 days after 4th of July when I went.
Yeah, time to get those kids back in school.
So I bought a Mario pencil box.
Ooh.
It's a hard Mario pencil box that I'm going to use to put something. I don't know. And then I bought a bunch of these. I've bought these in the past, but these are silicone Super Mario pencil cases. They're really squishy. And I use these for cables. I basically take one type of cable and put it in one of these containers. That's my way of organizing cables.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So like this will be all USB-C cables or something. When I'm done. Then although the cases all look the same, but usually the one on top of my cable drawer is the one I need anyways because it's the most useful one. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. Go hit up your local. I haven't checked Target or any of the other stores that do back to school stuff, but I suspect there's other video game branded back to school supplies coming.
Yeah, if one's converted, they all had to.
Yeah. All right, so that's a lot. What have you been up to?
Mostly, let's see. I had some pretty fun pickups since we last talked. I got one of those NABU computers, which for our listeners is some guy found a bunch, like a few pallets of new old stock of these Z80 computers from the 80s that you would get from your cable provider in Canada. It could play some games, so there's no disk drive or anything. All the games and stuff would come through the cable. And so some cool people, you can watch all this on YouTube, have created like a Raspberry Pi Zero thing that mimics the cable station, and you could do some really cool things with it. It was only like $90 or something for a new computer with its case. Oh, sorry, with its keyboard.
Yeah, and there was there's a great Vice article that I listed to or linked to in the notes to hope we include that. Kind of telling the story that someone had he bought thousands of them when they were on clearance. I don't know what his plan was. The article talks about what his plan was, but I guess he thought maybe he could flip them at the time, guess that didn't happen. He started selling them now, and the enthusiast community was like, wait a minute, why are so many of these showing up so cheap all of a sudden?
Yeah, because at first I think he was selling them for like $50 or $70.
Yeah. Yeah, he doubled the price once he realized that people actually wanted these.
Yeah. So that he puts up like 100 at a time. I think he's pretty much out now because he didn't have that many. I mean, he had quite a bit for, having new old stock, but it's not like this is definitely a limited thing. So scooped up one of those, so that'll sit in a box until I have time to do something with it. And then I also got an amazing price on a Vectrex, which I've never owned, so I picked that up. And it even came with a multi-cart.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Do you have a Vectrex?
I do not, no. No, I've played one many times.
Yeah, they're probably always at Midwest Gaming Classic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some people have converted them to arcade cabinets.
Oh, cool. Yeah. They're really neat.
Yeah, and they do, like, there's some setup, I'm going to get the details wrong and whatever, but they, like, have, like, a setup where it's, like, connected to a Raspberry Pi that, like, applies the overlays.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's, like, in an arcade cabinet, and when you choose a game, like, it does some stuff.
That's really neat.
Yeah, they're really cool looking. I mean, it's a lot of effort. But it's very cool.
And, yeah, there's, like, some weird, like, I guess, it has that CRT hum when you turn it on. I guess some of them could get quite loud, so there's actually a mod, a de-hum mod. So we'll see if mine needs that. And then this is kind of for an upcoming episode, but Hell Froze Over, and I am currently playing a turn-based RPG that I am loving. And a door may have opened for me, and I might actually like turn-based games now.
Okay.
So, listeners, let's see if you could guess which turn-based RPG I'm playing that I love, and it'll be a Game Club game soon.
All right. Sounds good.
And that's about it. We don't have that much news. We already did one of them.
Yeah, kind of two of them. I think the two biggest news articles this week were already covered.
Just a quick one is brilliantly modded Game Boy camera is no bigger than a cartridge. And yeah, this guy took a Game Boy camera and shrunk it down in size, and even took an iPhone, I think 13 lens, and used that. So it's still the same number of pixels, but maybe you get some better shots out of it. But this isn't for sale yet, but I don't know if he will sell it. But it's called the Game Boy Camera M. Kind of neat.
Yeah, I sort of doubt there's much of a market for it. I mean, I guess if you could somehow sell them for like, $100 each, and there were exactly 1,000 people who wanted it, you would do okay. Giving yourself like $10 markup or something in there. I don't know.
I'd be surprised if there was 1,000 people that wanted that.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Cool project though. I don't really care where that's useful. It's a cool project.
Yeah, it is cool. I mean, those are the fun projects, right? The weird ones. And speaking of which, on Hackaday, creating a Commodore 64 cartridge on a single-sided strip board. So, yeah, you could not use a floppy, not use audio tape. You can create your own Commodore 64 cartridge now. Which I guess you could always do, but this is kind of good how-to, I guess.
Yeah, it looks like definitely a very niche interest for that.
Something that'll likely not be on the internet long. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is coming to the Master System. So I guess this is a port of the first arcade Ninja Turtles game, which obviously had an actual NES release. And did it come to anything else? Really? Did it? I'm not sure.
I mean, no. There were games similar to it on the other consoles.
Yeah, but now this is on the Master System.
Like, why would you? Again, this is to me is just spend your time doing something else, man. But like, build a new game, with I don't know what, fighting chipmunks, fighting possums, some other creature. that are like obsessed with quesadillas and fight, some evil clan in the streets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But this isn't really that done either. I mean, it looks really good, but if you look at the video, like the AI isn't there yet, so it's like the bad guys, the Foot Clan, just kind of walk in one direction. So still some work to be done there. And then another hack, Myst for the Atari 2600.
Yeah, I don't know who owns the IP for Myst. I suspect that they will probably let this one slide.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't really recall any other, like, there have been some other Myst projects I've seen out there, and I don't know if they've gotten taken down, but this is so much not like Myst that maybe it'll just get ignored.
This is really impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, they did not have much space to use, and you could kind of tell what's going on. You could kind of tell it's Myst. And they even took out some of the bugs, so speedrunners can't just like beat it in 2 seconds or whatever you could do in Myst.
Yeah, Myst is one of those games that once you know the solution, you can solve it really fast, yeah.
And did we have anything else that we haven't talked about? No.
Nope.
Well, we do have an interview this week with Richard Moss and David Craddock, who have a new documentary coming out. I think it actually is out now because it's after July 6th. FPS, first-person shooter documentary, and here you go. All right, for the topic this week, we have an interview. First one in a while. We have a return guest, David Craddock, who you may know from writing Stay a While and Listen, Dungeon Hacks, Rocket Jump. There's a few more in there.
Yeah, just a few.
Just a few. And Richard Moss, who wrote Shareware Heroes and The Secret History of Mac Gaming. Thank you both very much for being here. And please tell us what you both collaborated on and why we're here right now.
We are the co-writers of FPS, first-person shooter, an upcoming documentary about RPGs. No, fooled you though. Yeah, it's an upcoming documentary covering a lot of the history of first-person shooters.
Exciting. Yeah, I checked out the trailer on YouTube, and it looks like you have a lot of people that you interviewed for this.
48 people. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Just shy of 50 for reasons, 48. That's a nice round number.
Yeah, I saw a lot of heavy hitters on there, like both Johns, and you had Burger Becky, and yeah. So tell us, how did this start?
Well,
the
project began with our executive producer Robin Block and co-director and editor Chris Stratton deciding they wanted to do a project together about games. And Robin's not much of a gamer, but he loves Halo. So he looked on the internet and thought, okay, there seems to be something in this first-person shooter thing. Maybe our expansion from doing, so the company was doing genre documentaries on films. They had a great success with In Search of Darkness, and we're in the process of doing In Search of Tomorrow, their sci-fi doc. And so he thought first-person shooters, that's a good thing. And he found a blogger to help him start putting together a bit of a synopsis. That didn't really work out very well, so he found me. I'd written a big piece on Ars Technica about first-person shooter history. And he contacted me. I had no idea what for. I thought maybe you want me as a creative consultant at the beginning to help you get on track, or you want to interview me. No, he pitched me on the first call after he'd checked that he liked me. He pitched me on working on this documentary as some sort of writer, producer, maybe a director. He wasn't sure at that point. It was very nebulous. And then I wrote a new synopsis, and a few weeks later, at my recommendation, he talked to David, and David slowly worked his way into the team and eventually became the co-director.
Yeah, so this was weird. I heard from Richard out of the blue, which we emailed back and forth a few times talking about a mutual publisher. And I really liked Richard's writing. I have Secret History of Mac Gaming on this shelf behind me. And so the opportunity to work with him was appealing. And I was brought on as a consultant. So I was there at every meetings, and Richard and I were talking about, games we definitely want to cover, contributors we definitely want to talk to. And this went on for some months until we launched the Kickstarter. And I think it was June or July of 2021. And I got a call from Robin, who was like, David, I want you to direct this. I was like, why? Maybe that's not what most people would say to that sort of offer, but it was my first response. And he's like, well, you've been at all the meetings. And I was like, I thought I had to be. Like, you don't give the kid with perfect attendance an offer to be the principal. But he said, no, you've had a lot of ideas. You've contacted a lot of the contributors. You know the history well, because I believe, Richard, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Richard recommended me because I'd written this book in 2017 called Rocket Jump Quake in the Golden Age or Era of First-Person Shooters, which concentrated a lot on the Quake trilogy, but also a lot of games that were inspired and influenced by Quake. And so, yeah, Chris and I have been co-directors and have been, I'm almost done with my final proofreading pass for the movie. That's what I was doing just before we jumped on this call.
Oh.
Very cool. Who was in charge of getting all the interviews?
Richard and I did that, and we also had Susan Lusty, who was a very well-known PR agent with a lot of contacts, and her business partner. We kind of divided and conquered. I talked to the id Software people a lot, and so I knew I'd be able to get John Romero. I knew American McGee. John Carmack, I had to email him twice, but he said, okay, you're one of the only people who can convince me to crawl out of my programming cave and, spend some time in sunlight talking about video games. But for the rest, it was just a lot of our recommendations based on Richard's synopsis and who we felt we really needed to talk to.
Was John Carmack kind of the hardest person? Too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, and I knew people too, and I had a bunch of contacts, and there's some people that I just went email hunting. I'm very good at that after doing a couple of books and years of freelancing. I'm very good at just finding developers now. One way or another, they're out there.
No, I was going to ask, was John Carmack the most difficult person to get on board, or were there other developers who had a challenge, maybe do their scheduling, or they're in a cave working on code full time? Was there anyone else that was difficult to get on the show?
No, that's a great question. John Carmack he has a very singular focus. Like he was doing, I don't know if he's announced the name yet, but he was starting up a new company. And so he was really involved with that, but agreed to take. I told him it wouldn't be more than 2 hours, and I stretched it to 2.5, but he wasn't too upset about that. And I think he was probably the toughest. There were people who were interested, but who couldn't do it because of scheduling. Like Ken Levine was this close, but he ended up not being available. So what Richard and I are hoping is some of those developers will see this documentary and go, wow, this is literally the greatest movie ever made, and want to sign on for a future project.
That's awesome. And I don't think we've mentioned this. When and how can people watch this? So starting on July 6th, we will have the movie up for pre-order on our Shopify. And the digital version, you'll be able to do that for a month, from like July 6th to August 1st. And the digital version will ship, quote unquote, in August, and I believe the physical editions will ship this fall. We still have to do manufacturing and all that stuff.
So in time for the holidays, people will be able to buy a
yes
DVD, Blu-ray for their loved ones.
That's right. And we have some special collector's editions. Like there's the classic PC big box. All this stuff comes in, so you can get that version. A lot of our backers who played an integral role in post-production actually have collections of these big boxes on their shelves. So it'll fit nicely right next to like, you know, the id Software Anthology, Duke 3D, all those sorts of games.
Are there any parts of interviews or stories you heard that you don't mind spoiling that that kind of shocked you or surprised you?
Richard and I both probably have some. Richard, do you want to go first?
I know I kind of put you on the spot there.
Yeah, off the top of my head. Okay, shocked or surprised. You know, I'm drawing.
I was surprised to see Burger Becky in there, just because I guess I didn't know she had a FPS background at all. I knew she had a lot of 2D background, just not.
Yeah, the interesting thing with Becky, we ended up having to leave this out of the documentary. Hopefully, we'll get to tell this story another time. But she did the Super Nintendo port of Wolfenstein 3D. And some other things as well with Wolf 3D. And then she ended up doing the Doom 3DO port. And that project has got a wild story behind it. This is basically put on by this one guy who didn't know what he was doing, but he had enough money to be publishing a game. And it was a nightmare project for her that just dragged on. She had unrealistic deadlines. There were a lot of things that weren't properly organized. They ended up getting his band, like he has a band, to record the music for the 3DO port.
Great.
And he, it turned out, had made a lot of promises to retailers to have the game done by a certain time. But that's without taking into consideration that she needs some months to actually do the port. It's not like you just plug it in to some thing behind the scenes and it's switched on for 3DO now. It'll work. No, she had to do a lot of bespoke work. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think for me, from Josh Fairhurst, actually, who's the CEO and founder of Limited Run, I never thought I would hear anyone say my dream game was Chex Quest, but he said it, and that was how Chex Quest, the remake / remaster, came around. So it's pretty cool that this game that a lot of kids, including me, found in their cereal box as a kid, which ended up being pretty good, a lot better than many Doom clones that had space on retail shelves, were really fun, and it was just kind of a cool little tidbit. I think also one of my favorite segments in the movie is Descent, and we included answers from different contributors about whether they did or did not get motion sickness playing. And that was kind of a fun discussion because I played that as a kid on a 486, 66 megahertz PC, and it ran the way it was supposed to run, which is, as Burger Becky says in the segment, between 15 and 20 frames a second. And it didn't bother me, even though I cannot ride a roller coaster without getting sick. It could go straight and I'd still get sick. But to capture footage, we actually played a source port. So I think it runs at like 60 frames per second now. So that's a game that I hope a lot of people go out and try if they missed it, because it's definitely more accessible than it was in 1995.
Yeah, I love Descent. The problem with Descent, of course, is that because it's 6 degrees of freedom and it's like mazes that you're flipping upside down and going in all directions on, it's really easy to get lost for people like me who have a bad sense of direction.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I need a map to figure out where I'm going, and even then I'm like, wait, where was I? I got to look at the paper and try and trace my spot.
Yeah,
But of course, this is Descent, so there's enemies that you got to deal with while you're doing that, and so I always found Descent really hard, even though I love it. It was one of my favorite games of the year. But fun fact for you guys is that Mike Kulas, actually one of the developers of the game, one of the leads on the game, gets motion sick playing it.
I was going to say that one for me is the worst for motion sick. Anyone that listens to this podcast knows that with FPSs, I have a problem with a lot of them getting motion sick. I don't know how. For a while, I played Doom for a long time, and then it just started happening. And then I just started getting into them again. Doom 64 again, got really queasy, but I was able to get through the last two Portal games, well, the only two Portal games, fine. So I don't know what the difference is between certain FPS games.
Yeah, we didn't really get to touch on this in the film because it might have been a little too deep, and also we covered so many games that even 4.5 hours wasn't enough time in some cases, but a lot of that has to do with locomotion. Doom 93 is the only FPS my wife can play that doesn't make her motion sick at all. For the rest, she can't watch me play because I'm like super PC master race card carrying member over here with my mouse sensitivity up to like 3,000. And she cannot watch me play those games, but Doom doesn't bother her at all. And Portal is really, really smooth as well. It might have to do with the source engine. Like, did Half-Life 2 make you queasy?
Very.
Okay,
Very.
maybe not then.
I could make it like 10 minutes in that game.
It might. Portal also, I don't think you sprint in that game, and it's not like you ever need to like react really quickly most of the time.
Yeah, you're just kind of hanging out. Yeah. Good point.
And you asked before about surprises or things that shocked us, and hearing that Dennis Thresh-Fong, one of the greatest competitive gamers of all time, actually gets motion sick playing Duke Nukem 3D was probably the biggest surprise in this film for me.
Yeah. On that note, another surprise is we got Ken Silverman, the build engine creator, on camera for the first time. And he explained a lot about how the build engine works and how he was kind of motivated to out Carmack, John Carmack. He would look at a lot of Doom's features and go, well, how can I expand on this or do something they didn't do? And of course, Doom doesn't have mouse look. So he created mouse look in Duke 3D, and we actually show this by shifting the horizon. But the thing is, in Duke, that has always made me a little bit queasy because the buildings and just the architecture kind of distort when you look
everything moves.
Yeah. Everything moves. Yeah. So I don't do that too quickly in Duke 3D, but otherwise I've always been okay.
Well, actually, I was going to ask the question you asked about the surprise. I was just going to show off. You mentioned how it looks nice in Anthology. I was actually working in a game store in '96. This was like the last week I worked there before I went back to college. That got released, and I'm like, well, might as well just get that. I think it's interesting you mentioned the remasters because there's, a lot of these games have gotten a second life recently through remasters. Like I finally played through all the expansion levels in Quake recently, and Doom 64 is like more accessible now than ever because you can play it without having to block out the sun from your house, I guess. Are there any, remasters that you found that were, particularly memorable or, a significant improvement over the first game?
I don't know if I'd say improvement because Quake was pretty impressive when it launched, but the Quake remaster from, I think, 2021 is super impressive. And that, of course, was done by Night Dive, who did, Doom 64, which is also really impressive. But what I really like as a PC player, I play on everything, but I love PC games. And the first thing I do after installing a game is I go into the options menu. And I just figuratively count options because the more the better, the happier I am. And just the options that they added to that, there's even a filter to change a lot of the lighting and color palette in the Quake 64 style, which was cool. So I really liked the Quake remaster from Night Dive.
And that they also did Turok, which the remaster is really impressive because they took this game that had teeny tiny draw distance on the N64 originally, and they just let you expand it right out if you wanted to in your options. You could play it like it's a modern FPS with some of that sort of volumetric looking fog instead of the closed in around you claustrophobic fog of the old days. And on top of that, we've got the story in the doc that they had when they were working on the thing and they pushed back this draw distance. They found out that, actually most of the trees haven't got a top drawn on them because the developers never needed to bother with that. They were under time constraints and there's only so much rendering the N64 could do. So when it came time to do the remaster, they actually had to hire artists to do models for the treetops so that they could get there's a whole bunch of really tall just stumps in the game that have no top originally if you
That's
go into some sort of
hilarious.
god mode and get up there.
That's great. Well, anything else that we haven't asked about that you wanna bring up about the movie?
I think one thing we do really well is you can watch any segment at any time in any order. They all work on an island, so to speak. But there are certain themes that I work to kind of bring forward. For example, we do, for the most part, the movie proceeds linearly, but there was a string of games starting with, I think, Unreal, and then going into Sin, and Trespasser, and then Half-Life, where I was kind of trying to show these were the attempts, early attempts at making more than just shooting galleries. We're going to try to tell a story here, and in the ways those games feel. Richard Lovelord Gray had a great quote. He said, "Sin never would have beat Half-Life, but we could have been the Pepsi to their Coca-Cola," which I thought was a really good analogy. And then you get to Half-Life, and it just sticks the landing. And so I think that's and then we go from there to Deus Ex, and I thought that was a really kind of fun sequence to watch. And again, any of those segments can be enjoyed in isolation, but if you're watching the whole movie front to back, I think you'll really enjoy those parts. And the beginning, we started out with some games that I think most people probably will not have heard of, which was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, we have some early games, I'm sure. You get into things like the zero tolerance games?
We didn't cover those. This was a very difficult balancing act between, Richard can speak to this too, because we were both constantly thinking about it, but we were trying to balance games that we knew we had to cover, but also getting into some fun out of left field games. Like Battlezone is a game we cover. And most people wouldn't think of that as a first person shooter, but it is a first person game where you are shooting. So that kind of checks the boxes.
Yeah, 100% it is, yeah.
I did want to point out that if you watch the trailer, I don't think you have to be an FPS fan to watch this documentary. I think anyone that's a fan of any video game or really any art would really enjoy this movie.
Yeah, that's something we want to go for too. Like one of the reasons we go so far back was twofold. One, I don't think a lot of people expected the FPS genre to have been born in 1973. They're probably thinking more along the lines of 92, 93 with Wolfenstein and Doom. But we also introduce a lot of concepts so that you can get a really good appreciation of where this started and where certain modalities kind of came into play, like online multiplayer, which was actually part of Maze War. So Doom, a lot of things that id Software did, they didn't really create the FPS, but they did codify it and popularize it. And that's why, there were Doom clones for years and years. And in fact, one of the sections is called Attack of the Doom Clones, where people are constantly talking about, we all liked Doom, but we didn't want to just make Doom. And we tried to highlight that as much as we could.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. It looked like we almost got Richard back there for a minute.
Yeah, almost.
He's at about, I don't know, less than 15 frames a second if we're talking FPS.
He's in descent mode right now. He's in descent.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so again, tell us the best way to get the movie, and if there's anything else you both are working on in the future that you want to talk about. Hopefully you'll be back on the podcast again.
I hope so. It's always fun. So by the time you're listening to this, FPS should be available for pre-order on Shopify at fpsdoc.com. That's fpsdoc.com. You can get the digital edition, the Blu-ray edition, and collector's editions with all sorts of extra goodies. The digital edition will be available to anyone who pre-orders in August, and then the physical edition will ship out this fall. And as far as what Richard and I are working on, we're both working on some books. I signed just this year alone, in 2 months, I signed 3 contracts. I don't recommend signing 3 contracts at once. But and then from there, I think Richard can chime in and tell you a little bit about what he's working on. And we both have, I don't think we can discuss concrete details, but we both have other documentary ideas brewing.
Am I back?
You're back. Yeah, we We were just finishing up, but I just wanted to see if you had anything else after this that you were working on, or any other of your projects that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, absolutely. As I caught David at the tail end there saying we have other ideas for documentaries, and that's very much the case. If this goes well, we are going to keep doing stuff. And I've been talking to Robin, our executive producer, about possibly doing a couple of things. I'm not going to say without David, but where David would have a much smaller role, but then also want to collaborate closely with David on something else, like another big genre doc or a sequel to this or whatever it is we end up doing. We have lots of ideas. And aside from that, I've got my book projects. I'm deep in the trenches right now on actually a genre history thing for bitmap books. And I've got, I can actually name this other one because I did talk about it once on the internet. I'm doing an Age of Empires book, history
great.
of the development and legacy of the first Age of Empires game. That's a really cool project. I'll be back properly on in a month or two. I'll be finishing up later this year, and then I've got lots of plans for other books. Not as many concurrent projects as David. I can't quite.
That's because you're sane. That's just Richard. These are good qualities.
Yeah, I can't quite manage to do so many things at once. I do better when I can hyper-focus. So I have to arbitrarily limit myself to just 2 or 3 projects at a time, or I end up completely neglecting whatever is not the flavor of that week.
Yeah, it could be like staring at the sun if you have too much going on like that.
Yeah, one thing I've started doing is just every January I map out a tentative schedule for the year, which is the only way I can keep a lot of this stuff straight. And you know, Richard and Chris and I, we have a larger team, about 7 people, sometimes 8 or 9, because we have people on our production team who are kind of on the periphery, you know, working in the shadows sort of thing. But we've been working on this for 2 years now. And so to me, the finish line kind of feels like a mirage. Like, is it really happening? Is this really almost finished? I almost like, you know, fingers crossed. But I actually want to turn the tables real quick on our hosts and ask you a question. We'll start with Rob, but what is your favorite first-person shooter? I'm always interested to hear.
Absolutely, Portal. It is. It is possibly the funniest and in the top 10 well-written games ever. Just the way they deliver something. I mean, I don't want to say simple because I'm sure programming that was a feat, especially back then. But to me, it's a flawless game, and I love beating it again and again every time just to hear those songs.
I have to agree with you. I liked Portal 2, but Portal was just this perfect size, really intimate setting, and I love that game. I go back to it every couple of years.
I say it's a lot like East Book 1 and 2, where East Book 1 is the best intro to a game ever, and that's how Portal is.
Good analogy.
Yeah. I would probably go Doom 2. It's definitely the one I played the most. I did last year play through, like you mentioned, the 2021 Quake Remastered. I played through that, and that was absolutely excellent. I liked the first Quake a lot when it came out. But Doom 2 is kind of the one I'll go back to a lot. Probably once a year I'll do a playthrough of Doom 2. And I have it on basically anything that it's ever been ported to. I have a Doom shelf over. I even have the Doom 2 screensaver over here, which is a kind of a deep cut. That's how much I like that game.
So Richard, he's got me beat, because Richard at various points had to say, like, David, you know, this isn't a Doom documentary, right? Like, what are you talking about? Out of 4.5 hours, it's only 2.5. That's pretty conservative, I think.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's simple. I don't, you mentioned being a PC gamer. I'm really more of a console gamer. And I don't like games that have too many buttons, which is weird because the Intellivision was my first system.
Yeah.
But I tend to gravitate towards things that are, you know, a little simpler to control, and Doom is kind of the right level for me. You know, it's got a good assortment of weapons. I don't have to memorize 100 different keys. Still very accessible, still very fun. And in this game, there's a few different ways to play through it. You know, you can try and run through it. You can take kind of it's not really like a stealth mode, but you can play it a little bit and like it's a stealth game at times. it just still holds up really well, and of course it's available on everything today.
Yeah, I almost
that too many buttons, the too many buttons thing has a funny moment in the documentary. Actually, Warren Spector was talking about how with like Ultimate Underworld and System Shock, they were thinking, well, you've got a keyboard that's full of buttons, so everything's got to do something, right?
Oh.
And, and it wasn't until afterwards that he realized what a stupid thing that idea was, when he saw other games. Like he saw one of the Terminator shooters, and it was using mouse look, and he had thought it wouldn't catch on, but then it very much was the way forward, and id Software were renowned for having quick, accessible, easy, intense gameplay, and it was a hard-won lesson for some of the guys at Looking Glass.
I think that was definitely, that's one of my favorite segments. I do love how Warren puts it. He's like, this will never catch on. I was just a little bit wrong about that. Like, but Richard and Chris and I definitely, we had two goals. We wanted this to be more than just a nostalgia fest. We wanted to go deep on certain topics, and we wanted the segments to be diverse enough so that you didn't feel like you were just watching kind of the same thing, different game. And those sorts of discussions are really fun. And it's supposed to be more upbeat and focused on the games and the memories and the design. But, Cliff Bleszinski, while talking about Unreal, hints at the toll crunch took on him, which is a topic you really can't avoid for too long if you're talking about any games development cycle ever. So, I think fans will find that we go in deep on different games and have different topics of conversation depending on the game. The Borderlands segment, for instance, is less on the shooter-looter design and more on the characters and how they could be kind of subversive given the game's context and setting. So really fun, diverse segments like that.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see this, guys. Once again, where can we get it?
Go to fpsdoc.com, and I think is that our Twitter handle too, Richard? It's been a while since I've...
Yeah, we're at FPS Doc on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And from July 6th until August 1st, David mentioned before, those are the dates for the final sale campaign. I believe you'll be able to get digital copies after that, but the big box thing may never be again. We'll see. Probably this edition, at least, will not happen again. So if you want a really nice box that you can put up on your shelves, like kind of things that I have here and that Hughes has behind him, you want to get in on this campaign. You want to pre-order it.
I love it. I'm in. I can't wait. And I hope, to have you both on again with all your future projects. I'm a big fan of both of you. So, this has been great.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you.
And thank you, Richard and David, for that fun interview. And I can't wait to see the documentary. I guess we have Game Club. I guess this podcast has something to do with playing video games.
Yes. Yeah.
Want to do yours first? I feel like I've been talking a lot.
Okay. Yeah. So I did Track and Field. This is a game I admitted beforehand I didn't like, and that I would at least give it another shot. And I think looks like in the show notes, Zach added a link to the Atari 2600 version, which I did not try. I probably should have, because it looks interesting. Anyhow, this came out when at one point we were living in a fairly small town, and I moved around a lot as a kid, and the only thing in town to do was a roller rink. Mm-hmm. There were like arcades too. This was the 80s, obviously, but there was like a roller rink, and that's kind of what you did on the weekend a lot. And I was garbage at skating. I still can't skate, and instead I like to hang out in the arcade area. So it's like, you can imagine the roller rink like you would see in an 80s movie if you somehow missed out on this real experience. But it's a place they're blasting all the kind of breakdancing music and in this arcade with relatively new games, and of course people smoking everywhere.
Yeah.
whenever people get like nostalgic about the 80s, I always have to remind them that like everywhere you went, people were smoking.
Yeah, inside cars, everything. Yeah,
inside. Yeah, exactly. Restaurants, movie theaters, the roller rink arcade. It was just everywhere. And I remember track and field being there because I remember there was always a line to play track and field, and people like flailing on the buttons as hard as they possibly could to win the game. Because track and field ultimately is a game of mashing buttons really fast. I don't know if there's a lot of other skill involved other than mashing buttons. The graphics, I think, look really nice. I still think the artwork style is very good. Eventually, the arcade there added these like guards around the buttons, so you could only like poke them. You couldn't like slam your hands on the buttons, if that makes sense.
Weird. Okay.
Like a raised ring around there. I'm guessing that the arcade distributors started sending those out due to high numbers of broken cabinets.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I tried this game again and I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Do not like this game. I only moderately enjoy it if I use Turbo Fire.
And you just hold the button down and release when it's time to jump or whatever.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, that's the only way I can play this game. I don't like games with that easy. I'm just going to slam buttons, and really, there's no other strategy involved, I don't think.
Yeah. I emulated this on the Pocket, and I felt the exact same way. Like, well, is this even a game kind of thing?
Yeah.
I do remember seeing kind of a speed run. I don't know if it's a speed run or a hack trick, whatever, but where you put a pencil down between the buttons, or no, you put your finger down between the buttons and you use a pencil, like kind of as your finger as a lever, and rock it back and forth as fast as possible to push the buttons. And it looked like it really hurt, like just to get the high score in the game.
Yeah, that's part of the reason they added the guardrails, I bet. I remember hearing about a trick like that. I think it was after the game was out for a while. I don't know, like there's a video, if you go to like tazvideos.org, they have the NES track and field. Taz means tool assisted speedrun. The tool assisted speedrun for NES track and field. And it's as ridiculous as you can imagine. There's some hack where also if you click pause, you can get more button presses in between things. So like these guys are breaking every world record by insane margins. Like javelin throw goes, I think, like beyond the like highest number on the screen. No, not quite. It's close though. So yeah, it's just an absurd speed run.
Yeah, I wonder how they keyed that in, because I guess if you press the buttons too fast, it wouldn't register as a press.
Well, like triple jump, the guy he's jumping 30, 40 feet up in the air. I mean, it's like at least 3-4 times his body height.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I don't know about this. I understand why it was a big hit, like in the arcade, and it's the 80s, and you're hanging out and smoking and stuff. Like I can imagine that being kind of fun. That whole experience of like which of my friends can mash buttons faster.
Well, also the 84 LA Olympics, either was about to happen or just happened whenever you played this game. So there's kind of a hot topic at the time. So track and field was big.
Yeah, I think, it's true. I didn't think of the 84. I mean, I know we're still a year away, but it seemed like Olympics was hot for like a year or two before they actually happened.
And John Williams did the theme, made it all big.
Did we know that the Soviet Union was going to boycott already or not? I'm trying to remember when that officially happened. Because like once the Soviet Union pulled out, it's like, okay, well, we're just going to win everything, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Any final track and field thoughts?
No. I'm sure someone will write in and explain that I'm completely missing the point of the game. But no, this is just not for me. I thought, okay, I'll try it. I'll watch the speed runs. I'll try an emulated version. See if I could. No. Nope. Nothing is bringing me around to liking this game, unfortunately.
So you played the NES port?
Well, I tried the NES port. I tried it on MAME. Nothing. Nothing. I didn't try this 2600 version yet.
Who knows? It could be like the California games. It could be great.
It could be. Yeah, California games is strangely, especially the biking, is strangely awesome on 100. And I think Zach made a comment about the 2600 version. I got to scroll back to that. Supports the controller, but it's easier with keyboard. Yeah, I think instead of pressing buttons, you move the joystick left and right really fast.
Oh, jeez. That actually makes more sense to me, though.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
My game was Any LaserDisc game, so I played Dragon's Lair 2. What's it called? Time Warp. And this game, I don't know. So I really like Dragon's Lair. Dragon's Lair 2 came out in 91. The first one came out in 83, so it kind of missed the mark. They're kind of a little bit too late. These are easy to get, especially on PS4. And Steam and stuff. There's the trilogy you could buy, but there's so much going on the screen that it's hard to understand when to do what. Even with easy mode where you have the arrows and stuff telling you what to do, it's just hard to follow. The animation still looks great, but again, it's just so busy. Like I said, this came out in 91, but on Amiga and ST, it came out in 1990 before it was done. So I read that they did the graphics on that with just like a VHS as a reference, like unfinished, just VHS dump of it.
Okay.
And it does not look good on those compared to the arcade, not at all. But this is also on DSiWare, and on, if the likely event that you don't own that, you could watch it on YouTube, and it looks fantastic. I mean, it really looks like the arcade port. It's smooth, it's fast, the animation looks great. The bottom shows you which objects you've picked up. So something to look for there, but yeah, it's fine. I don't think it's as good as Dragon's Lair. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
I actually haven't played Dragon's Lair 2 a whole lot. I mean, I sort of saw it's like the Dirk and the princess have a bunch of kids now or something. Is that?
Yeah, and she gets and then she gets kidnapped again, and Dirk needs to use this time machine with his sword, and they go to like Alice in Wonderland and a few other places, Egypt. So Daphne's a much bigger part of this because he almost gets her many times.
Yeah.
She just kind of keeps slipping away. But yeah.
So it's like Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego, but with Dragon's Lair.
Yeah, exactly. It's a strange one.
No, I actually over lunch watched a couple Dragon's Lair speedruns. I linked two here. One's kind of a weird one because it's from a speedrun, one of the speedrun awesome games done quick festivals, but the player doesn't actually seem to be that great at the game. They like get a game over at one point, but they explain how to do the rooms really well, so I think that one still has some value. And then there's like a Xbox arcade playthrough that I would recommend that is like a perfect playrun, zero mistake playthrough of the game. And that's why I still like that game. I'm not as good at it as I used to be. If you play it, like I think I mentioned last time, like the Sega CD version is pretty forgiving about timing, and the 3DO version is not forgiving at all about timing. So that's one I'd recommend. And if you don't like playing it, honestly, it's a game where watching a speed run is about as good as playing it.
Yeah, a little way less frustrating, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I should mention there is a CDI port of this, and it looks really good, but it's only at like 15 frames a second.
Yeah, that's another one you will see. If you ever go to Midwest Gaming Classic, whenever they have a CDI set up, it's almost always a Dragon's Lair game.
Yeah, because it's all it could do.
Yeah, well, it's really all that I think it's all that people want to play. I don't know how interested people are in exploring the CDI library. I think they want to play, they want to see the weird Zelda games, and they want to see Dragon's Lair, and that's about it.
Well, what do you think you're going to play next?
Well, I'm going to stick with my Summer 83, but also combine it with the first-person shooter. And I'm going to play Crossbow.
Nice.
Which I believe is technically a first-person. They in our interview, they mentioned Terminator 2 being a first-person shooter, and Crossbow's the same style. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to do one of the most terrifying games ever, Berzerk.
Berzerk, yeah.
So I don't know what that one... I mean, that one's probably around the same time.
Yeah, it's a little bit earlier because it's on the Pac-Man Fever album.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, that's a funny album because like most of the songs are just a description of how to play the game. Like they read the instructions on the side panel and made that a song, right?
Yeah.
I think Berzerk, this song is more like I'm going berserk, I think is how the song goes. I don't think it's about the game so much. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll listen to the song at least.
Well, if any of our listeners play Crossbow, Berzerk, Track and Field, or any LaserDisc game, if you watch the first-person shooter documentary, if you have all your Sega files leaked, or if you play Myst for 2600, please email us. Email at retrogameclub.net. That is email at retrogameclub.net. Or see all of our other social network websites that Zach maintains in our show notes. And we do have some listener feedback this week. We have this one from Woody, where he says his childhood memory of LaserDisc games are seeing Space Ace for the first time and being amazed at the cabinet and the graphics. But, you know, you only have a couple seconds to play it because you die straight away. He enjoyed watching the attract mode afterwards, after spending all his money. And he also played the holographic Sega game Time Traveler, and again, he died right away, but he remembered being very impressed at the hypnotic holographic effect. And yeah, I think that's a very common experience for both those games. Mm-hmm. And SM Olivia writes in about the LaserDisc game discussion that Hugh mentioned the RDI Halcyon, mm-hmm. and he blogged about it because he does a Computer Chronicles blog, and he thinks it's one of the most infamous on-air demos ever because it wasn't just a prototype of a home LaserDisc game console. It was also like an AI voice recognition thing, and so for Thayer's Quest, it was originally developed for that. And on the Computer Chronicles, they try to get Stuart Chaffee to demonstrate how the voice recognition worked, and it didn't. And even Kerry Gildall looked pretty mad, which I don't think I've ever seen Kerry Gildall mad. He seemed like the most gentle soul ever. So I love Computer Chronicles. I love SM Olivia that you do that blog about it. I think it's cool. I need to look at that episode because I don't remember it at all. But yeah, he goes on to email about how it probably never shipped because it was like $2,500, you know, way back then. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I think I listed it on my console timeline, despite it not actually being a real system, just because I like the idea of it.
Yeah. I'm sure if one of those made it out in public, it'd be worth a lot right now.
Yeah. I think some have shown up on eBay before. I'm pretty sure more of them exist than the Nintendo PlayStation prototypes.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
You know, there's just one of those, and I guess eventually some dude bought it.
And we'll never see it again. It's just on a shelf somewhere.
It's on a shelf. Yeah, maybe he's. I don't know, but yeah, maybe another one of those will turn up. Who knows? See, Majors writes in to also recommend the Shantae games. So I think I'd mentioned that you might like the Shantae games. Yeah, he recommends Pirate's Curse specifically, which is a good one. That's actually like the hardest game though in the series, man. That one I thought was pretty tough. But yeah, I said they were for him the GoBots were the toys that grandparents would get them, and they ended up being used as cannon fodder with other toys. So probably not many survived. All right, LaserDisc games. He says like most folks and knows the common games like Dragon's Lair and Space Ace, but was also a fan of Mach 3 because it was a shooter and less of like a Twitch game, whatever, QuickTime event game. His story is he wanted to talk about when he was in San Luis. His mother worked at Cal Poly, and he would frequent the Student Union arcade lot. I can't read. I apologize for that. And he was present when they first set up Dragon's Lair and was in awe at the time. And then he noticed the technician servicing the machine part and played the entire LaserDisc from start to finish. So I guess you could do as one of the service things to make sure the disc worked.
Cool.
But watching the LaserDisc straight through, which I think I mentioned you could do, you watch hundreds of death scenes.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds of death scenes. Analog Duo pre-purchase. He mentions getting that possibly while hungover, but still does not regret it. The logic being that it kind of future-proofs his Turbo Gear with a newly made console. Some folks complain about the $50 price increase in added shipping, but with being 3 years after the announcement and chip shortages and inflation and all that, I guess it kind of makes sense. Yeah, that's kind of my grievance about the Duo is really the shipping costs. I think I paid more for shipping than I did for the console. Mr. Does Everything. Seems like the Mr. community is awful aggressive about proselytizing. Yeah, I think of all the retro game communities that proselytize, like the Mr. folks are. There's PC Master Race and there's Mr. Right?
Oh, I'm part of the Mister.
I'm aware. Yeah. It
could do no wrong.
Yeah. Mister is just the panacea for some people, I guess. Mentions the TurboGrafx 16 not having controller ports and bring up the TurboTap, which I own a TurboTap. I think everyone had to get one, but I think that's the problem. I think when you're a kid and you're going to the game store and like you see a system with just one controller port and they want to charge you to add more controller ports, it seems like a ripoff. Because every other system at the time came with multiple controller ports.
Yeah.
Was there any other just single? I mean, like the 3DO kind of was a single port system. I know it wasn't actually, but it was like one. Just whatever. And then he watched the Doom movie last week. He says, said it wasn't really that bad. Is the kind of the short version here. Told the actors to just play your best Hicks from Aliens. That's true. Elevator Action. He and a friend had it his friend had it on the NES, and they had a lot of fun with the sort of knockoff Peter Gunn spy theme. Jump kicking an enemy was a cool move, but I recall getting on the elevators was very difficult. The sequel on Saturn in the arcade called Elevator Action Returns is a pretty fun game and a good update of the original.
I always forget about that.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for email. Thank you to everyone.
Yeah. We got some social feedback, some what were you playing in the summer of 1993? And some people write Gauntlet Tron or Robotron because they were never really good at the Street Fighter type games. First time seeing VR in an arcade, which, that's about the right time. Ikari Warriors, Russian Attack, Turtles in Time for sure. Let's see. And Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat 2, NBA Jam, and X-Men. Yeah, it was probably X-Men, probably the Simpsons game, stuff like that. Definitely an NBA Jam.
Yeah, 93. I didn't play a lot of NBA Jam back then. I played a lot of it once I got a home version. But yeah, Mortal Kombat 2 and Street Fighter 2. Definitely spent a lot of time on those.
I remember thinking I was really cool when I knew the big head combo.
I thought that was one of the things that made me not interested in NBA Jam.
I have to remember. I can't believe I forget what it is now. But I think that pretty much wraps it up. We had kind of a long episode this time.
We did, yeah. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.